of industry. The problem is this obfuscation of the currency dedicates ever more of the circulation instead to servicing this ever escalated sum of artificial indebtedness, dedicating ever more of every unit of the circulation to doing so, thus depriving the income of labor management and ownership of the ability to spend all of their income toward the production of industry. Instead, ever more of it is dedicated to servicing the escalated sum of falsified indebtedness. So whatever he's referring to by shift B, I assume might, refer to the B in Douglas's A plus B theorem. I don't know, but where he gets shift B, I have no idea. But that kind of terminology is certainly not terminology that someone uses who attempts to create an understanding in their audience. For instance, the terms that I've used for so long of circulatory inflation and price inflation distinguish between inflation of the circulation and inflation of prices. Maldisposition refers to this perpetual dedication of ever more of the circulation to servicing the escalated sum of artificial debt. So these terms are, interest-bearing debt, terms that I had to invent in explaining mathematically perfected economy from the outset since 1968. We had a full-fledged thesis with formal terms, related to virtually all these things. By 1975, I had so often, so regularly, so thoroughly, so exhaustively, and so comprehensively accounted for all of the issues. We had these terms. We've had these terms for most of my life. Now, so here comes this John, King of the Paupers, into People for Mathematically Perfected Economy at Facebook, saying that the big lie of economics, which, I'm the one who exposed this lie. Even, Congressman Louis T. McFadden and all the people that he addresses in his famous June 15th, 1932 congressional address, nobody even hinted that they understood there was an obfuscation of the currency here. They were mindful and vigilant that there was a breach of principle, and they even spoke of such things, but they didn't articulate them in exacting terms which defy refutation. They're so sound because they are so sound because there is a proof, that interest is not only unjustified, but that it's inherently terminal. And he gives this speech, in the midst of the Great Depression, failing to realize the issues. And Douglas's work is the same. It doesn't identify the issues. So anyway, he says in this shift B, inflation is not more money chasing the goods, but the same money chasing less goods. Well, why wouldn't I explain it in those terms? The same money chasing less goods. It isn't the same money chasing less goods. It's more of the money being unavailable to purchase the production of industry because ever more of the circulation is dedicated instead to servicing the falsified sum of artificial indebtedness, which in interest multiplies into a terminal sum of artificial indebtedness. That's the issue, So not more money chasing the goods, but the same money chasing less goods. I'm sorry, you're talking about the same money. So he's talking about it as a volume of money. And what I'm getting at is, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, I wouldn't have dreamed that anyone considers this person to be a credible authority. To say that the same money is chasing less goods is just wholly in error. The same money. You're not talking about the volume of the money chasing less goods. You're talking about industry can still produce just as much as it ever did, but less is sold, less is consumed by the markets because of the money, more of it is dedicated to servicing debt, leaving ever less to sustain markets and consumption and production, therefore. So this isn't even evocative of the real sums and processes involved. So there's nothing credible about it at all as I read it, So he says, economics teaches up over here money, but not down over there collateral. What the hell is this? That's unintelligible practically. Maybe it makes some sense to this fellow, but economics teaches up over here money, but not down over there collateral. I'm the discoverer of shift B inflation 30 years ago, he says. Okay, so he's actually, as we discover later, he's actually blundered into my forum claiming to precede me when he doesn't realize that I would be at least 13 years before him then, because he hasn't studied anything. He's just come in here making accusations. And furthermore, he's saying he's the discoverer of shift B inflation and he actually claims to discovered some other things which I, authored far before him, and I'm afraid fails to understand, even, much less did he author them. But here he says, I'm the discoverer of shift B inflation 30 years ago. And so he then attempts to prove it by saying, and if you Google for it, you'll notice no one else on the planet teaches the other possibility, not even money reformers. Well, is that so? Not only have I done so since the very first days of the internet, and you all can go to perfecteconomy.com and see that indeed there's somebody here right now, but he's saying no one else does this. So this man is, excuse me, full of crap. But neither, however, is he the discoverer of shift B inflation. And you have to understand, I don't consider myself an economist. That would, how do I put this into gentle words? Economics is such a preposterous facade that to my whole life, even to my mathematics skills when I was 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years old, to call me an economist would have been a terrible, terrible insult, because the connotation of that is that somehow I came out of, or at some time belonged to, and perhaps they still belong to, perhaps some distinct, sector of this huge, preposterous lie of economics, which actually relates and revolves about a process which is not only uneconomic, but imposes and multiplies artificial costliness into terminal failure even. You couldn't be a more preposterous pseudoscientist than to call yourself an economist, like you're one of them. Well, I certainly wouldn't be one of them, and the most I could go that direction would be to say that, I'm a different kind of an economist. But no. I won't do that, because the truth of the matter is, I hate to say this, but I've thrown away 43 years of my life trying to make the world right. And the last thing that I did was what people call economics. That word is so misused. Every time we use it, it means the opposite of what we're trying to say, and we don't get it. And the thing is, it's just a few little things that are expressed in the most elementary math that refute this whole preposterous science. But little do I dream. So I'm a mathematician. That's it. And I don't, I've practiced math at such an elementary, fundamental level that, for so long in advocating this, blatantly obvious set of a small handful of facts that people could have understood so long ago, and now they're losing their houses and they're losing their businesses, and they can't afford to get health care, and and they're suffering poor diet, when the money goes, you resort to carbohydrates, and you can look everywhere around you and you see the results of a carbohydrate diet. I'm a mathematician, but little would I dream then that these posts are from someone who, at least by his own testimony, is a purportedly leading monetary reformist. He claims he discovered shift B, what he calls shift B inflation. Poor terms for a scientist. But a thing that doesn't even exist. You don't have the same money chasing less goods. You have less of the same money available to persist in industry and commerce. It's a hugely different thing. If we just had the same money chasing less goods, we could produce more. The reason we can't, and of course our ability to produce more persists. The reason that industry is suffering is this maldisposition that I just explained, that ever more of the circulation is dedicated to servicing this escalating sum of artificial indebtedness. So he's claiming to discover something which, in truth, doesn't even exist. So he was 30 more years ahead of me in discovering something that doesn't even exist, which he claims is equivalent to my work. No such fact in the world. He's only wrong in what he's claiming to have discovered, which doesn't even exist, and there's no equivalence to this idea of maldisposition, terminal failure, singular solution of three categoric faults: inflation, deflation, and maldisposition. Secondly, systemic manipulation of the cost or value of money or property. And thirdly, inherent, irreversible, and therefore terminal multiplication of artificial indebtedness by interest. So these are mere claims, and we have quite a boastful fellow here, And if you Google for it, you'll notice no one else on the planet teaches the other possibility, not even money reformers. This man hasn't even read these threads on the same page because I'm teaching it as a consequence of my work, which precedes even his 30 years by 13 years, And the fellow's probably older than I am, Moreover, there probably isn't any evidence that he discovered this 30 years ago. There certainly isn't, because it isn't true. He couldn't have discovered. You can't discover what's not true, what doesn't even exist. But if he came up with my ideas, which he does fess to have accomplished, he's actually not discovered those things either. But the truth is, what do we see here? Do we see a pattern of a person who actually develops veritable solution? We see accusations, we see strategy, we see poor terminology, we see claims of discovery of things which don't exist, and you can't prove exist except as a consequence of what I claim, on the contrary, is their cause. And he furthermore says, if I Google for it, I'll discover that no one else on the